Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Inktovo, the parent company of GraphicsFlow, Inksoft, Printavo, and now SignTracker. Welcome to Decorator Academy. We've got a wonderful topic here today, boosting efficiency and creativity, the power of outsourcing graphic design. And with that being said, I have two superstars on with me today. I have Nick Wood and Lucas Nielsen from GraphicsSource. We are really excited to do this. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. Two of my all-time favorite people in our industry. And we are going to give you the complete lowdown on outsourcing.
Absolutely. Nicholas Wood, GraphicsSource. So I've been in the industry for almost 20 years now. So I'm really excited for this specific topic, especially to do this with Craig, because I've actually been a person who used Craig's products in the past. So yeah, really, it's just a really good fit, good synergy and all that good stuff. So I think we're really going to pass off a lot of very poignant information, not only in the graphics side, but also how to really integrate and kind of help your business from the art side of things.
I was raised in this industry, so this is the only thing I know about. And I was able to come join the GraphicsSource team about just over 3 years ago now. And it's amazing how much of an impact getting good art helps everybody. And the team that we work with is so good. And it's so much fun to work here, and so much fun to share this information with you guys, because it's honestly going to help you so much.
Excellent. And also, we're a customer. Inktovo is a customer of GraphicsSource. So we actually have a full-time dedicated designer through GraphicsSource that I work with all day long. And Fernando, he's absolutely remarkable, always exceeds expectations. So there's a quickie little testimonial. So the first thing I'd like to do is I just want to kind of lay the foundation for what we're going to talk about today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Nick and Lucas, and they're going to do a presentation. But let's really kind of talk about the problem, which is artwork, graphics. It's certainly one of the biggest challenges that any small business has, or even large business in our industry, for a couple of reasons. Number one, your customers don't understand what it takes to put things together. They just think graphics magically happen. And number two, there's quite a process and an expensive process in not only creating graphics, but getting them set for production so they can go to your equipment properly. So I'm going to do a quick little slide deck here, just a brief little presentation here. And one of the things I always like to talk about is, the true cost of our development. I'm very sensitive to this for a couple of reasons. Number one, we ran a $15 million a year collegiate sportswear business that was in my other life, prior to being involved with formerly Digital Art Solutions, now GraphicsFlow, and then being part of the Inktovo family of products. And we had 22 people on our art staff, and we were processing orders for 6,000 customers. And so we had a massive group of in-house art people, and it was always the kind of the bottleneck. And on the other side of my career, we were creating graphics and selling them to people like you. So I was managing art departments for that. And I've worked with both teams as well as freelance teams. The true costs, freelance graphic designers are not free. I mean, if you're going to hire a freelance, you're going to pay for them. And also, I think people don't really consider the creative tools, design software, computers, and peripherals. Most of the higher end pro sign software is going to be a subscription, which I think is pretty manageable when you have one person on staff. But when you're running 5 or 6 artists and you're giving Adobe $80 a month per artist, that really starts to stack up. Also, add-on costs of design revisions and iterations. So we created one great design, and we want to take that same great design and port that over to another customer. That's really a new design. It's just a revision of the previous one. So we're paying for that. And then also licensing fees for, stock images, including fonts, clip art, things like design templates. And you have your internal costs. A lot of times your marketing team has to be involved. So that kind of takes them away from some of their other duties. Complexity and variety of deliverables can also increase your costs. What do I mean by that? If you're having to get artwork set up for 8-color simulated process screen printing, that's a much more complex type of artwork preparation. It's very specialized, takes a long time, it has to be done right. Or if you're a screen printer, you're having to do multiple press checks versus maybe setting something up for a direct-to-film transfer where there's fewer rules. When you're actually accounting for your costs, you have to consider every job requires artwork. There's both variable and fixed costs that go into that artwork. Your fixed costs are going to be things like your software and your wages. but then you have all the variable costs that are involved in it as well. Connecting all the variable costs to a job can be really tricky. How much did the artist really spend on that job? Do we really know? Are they tracking every minute? Are they jumping back and forth between jobs? I remember we used to sell a software that was a job tracker, and the artist would start the job. They'd have to click on a button and it would time them. If you track a designer's time for each order, it doesn't necessarily correlate to the cost of that job. A lot of times I think what people will do, they'll say, hey, I'm paying an artist $4,000, $5,000 a month, $4,000 a month and 100 jobs. So my cost per job is $40 a job. And I think that's probably the most accurate way of doing it. The advantages of outsourcing a graphic designer. So right now, in terms of our internal art development for our company, we use freelance graphic designers for doing our creative for all of our monthly templates for GraphicsFlow. We get a pretty wide assortment of styles and people with different skill sets, and they can produce a lot of variety. And then we actually use GraphicsSource. We have a full-time designer that we have with GraphicsSource that does all of our branding, does all of our marketing communication, does all of our ads, came up with our Inked Avocado logo, all of our trade show marketing, does all of our trade show banner layouts, everything. And we have a full-time person through GraphicsSource that does that. So when I'm outsourcing, I can access a broader talent pool. So I can find somebody that's a really good digitizer or somebody that's really good at simulated process versus one person maybe in-house that we're trying to kind of conform to do it all. And also outsourcing, one of the things I really like about outsourcing is scalability. So when we need to ramp up, it's just a simple little phone call. Hey, looks like we're going to need more capacity this month. We need to bring on a second artist because we're really ramping up for our 12 days of Inkmas promotion in December, which is a real thing. And then also working with multiple outsourced designers can bring fresh perspectives and creative input to your business. What do I mean by that? We work with t-shirt designers. So in my opinion, there's a big difference between a t-shirt designer and a graphic designer. So when we're developing content to populate, say, templates in Inksoft or populate our monthly design drops in GraphicsFlow, if I just hire a general graphic designer to do that, they might not be tuned in to the trends in apparel decoration. When we hire t-shirt designers, they're doing the research. They know what's happening in the marketplace because they're doing artwork for big retailers like people like Fanatics or Nordstrom Corporation or the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Those are real examples. We can really stay tuned to what's going on. So when I just have an in-house graphic designer, one of the things I've experienced personally, they say they can do any style. Designers all kind of have their comfort level and their styles, and I could always go through any of the graphics that we're producing, and I could put a name on that graphic just because I was familiar with their style. The people I really appreciate, like our team right now, it's pretty hard to do that because they can actually produce a wide variety of styles. Ultimately, what you're going to have to decide is, are you going to continue forward with an in-house graphic designer, which could be you, or are you going to look at outsourced graphic design? And that's really what we're here to talk about today. And, everything comes down to finances, obviously, but it's also going to be based on your budget and your long-term goals. And, we have a lot of clients that use a hybrid approach. They have a physical in-house person that does, we try to get them to do the work that's bringing revenue in so that they're a profit center. But all the lower level stuff that's, not necessarily the tedious stuff, but the things that aren't going to require maybe as much creative input, they're outsourcing that. And I think, honestly, that's a really, really good approach. And, you have to evaluate your priorities and your budget constraints and, also the skill level that's required for the projects. And hey, I'm going to turn it over to you guys now.
Craig, that was, you brought up some really good points that I wanted to touch on in there. One, the scalability aspect of it, we see that all the time. To give you an example, with a lot of our staffed clients, it's usually the back to school time that is when people start really ramping up and getting busy. So with their staffed artists, we can either do overtime or add another person, which is typically how it goes. But yeah, also you were talking about access to different designers. That is a huge point. Until you brought that up, I hadn't really, thought about it that way. So with our creative team, it took a long time to build out our creative team just because it's so highly specialized. Good illustrators, production artists are easier to find than, somebody that can hand illustrate, use Procreate, and really build something from scratch. But with the cool thing is with our staffing programs is you have access to that pool is exactly 100 people in creative. So yeah, it's awesome to kind of have that, different stylized and ping somebody else too. So You also brought up another point in regards to the art being a profit center. That is something I've been, singing from the rooftops for years of, hey, if you have a creative piece, or even if it's, a simulated process job, that is highly specialized. So you really should be charging for that artwork. And, oftentimes I tell our people that staff with us, offset our monthly cost and billing your customers art, or, even if you build it into the job, just make sure that it is a profit center for sure. So Lucas, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, when you staff an artist with us, they do leverage the other team members. So your artist is never by themselves. So when you're saying you're doing a mix of staffing and freelance, we actually kind of have a built-in freelance support system for our art teams. And every artist has their own little bent. So we're really here to try to help you guys grow your companies. And nothing starts until there's art. It's the most important thing we do. And art done right makes production go smooth. And we just really care about this space and making sure things flow right. Because when you get stuff and you send it to the iImage and it prints out and everything works and it goes on the press and you make money, it's like beautiful. So being part of that workflow is great.
Yeah, the art is definitely the nucleus of every job. Let's go ahead and start going through the presentation. So I did want to go over our company history. So we have a very rich history in the apparel background. So GraphicsSource is third generation textile, meaning that we had a patch manufacturing division in Dallas, and I've got some slides after the company history that go over how we got started in this industry. So Dallas Cap and Emblem started back in the 60s. We actually made the patches that went on the Apollo mission and all that good stuff. So the thought process of, hey, maybe other people need this, that was really kind of the whole nucleus of how GraphicsSource and the outsourced designer and specialized skill set really got started. So yeah, a little corporate history. 1984, Action Tapes Incorporated, NetEMB and Sunshine founded. So that was the nucleus of, hey, I'm going to send a digitized job to NetEMB, Sunshine, or Action Tapes. And this is back in the day when they had to actually manually punch out the digitizing design and then send that back to the customer via like FedEx. This is even before FedEx, USPS. But yeah, we would actually like manually punch this thing out. And, a digitized design nowadays, our turn times are 24 hours or less. Back then, a good digitized design could take, a week and a half, 2 weeks to actually punch this thing out. So what we do now is deliver intellectual property. But yeah, so NetEMB and Sunshine began a partnership. There was a Canadian person that was doing pretty much the same thing that we were doing. So instead of, viewing that as competition, we actually formed a really good partnership in 1990. As overseas companies started coming in, we realized, hey, we've got to expand out, to do it domestically, it just was way too expensive. And, as the Indian partners came up in Thailand, and we really found that we needed to branch out and kind of not necessarily just leverage the cheaper labor markets, but also places that could run while we're sleeping. So if we were able to get our orders in, before 5 o'clock Central Time, that means, it's like a Christmas package in the morning every single day where you're coming back to a file that's ready for, that 8 o'clock production. So, but our first outsourced office was in Bangkok, Thailand. And the way that we train these people on how to digitize the way that we did it in the States is we would run one-to-one files, meaning that we would run the same file in the States as the file in Bangkok. And until the Bangkok team were running one-to-one with the American standards, we didn't fully pass off all of that workload to Thailand until it was one-to-one. And nowadays, like that Thai team does better digitizing than literally anybody in the world. And the cool thing is too, with that Thai office, they actually have physical embroidery machines there. So it's when we send off the digitizing, it's not just to, okay, it looks good on screen, let's send it back to the customer. they're doing physical samples. And I've actually got a video that we'll run through a little bit later on that shows, that whole process and how it flows through. It's pretty intense how it flows through the tie-line company. It's not like we just say, hey, here's your design, digitize it. It goes through QC, it goes through order screening, make sure that, the fabric colors are right, the thread colors are right. So there's a lot of administrative work that goes into, that file really getting done the correct way. So 2011, so NetMB and Sunshine officially merged. So we would use Sunshine as kind of a lever to pull if we were overflow. But in 2011, it was like, hey, there's a good partnership here. So we essentially doubled the size of our digitizing operation with that partnership. And it's actually been a really amazing partnership. 2013, we acquired Riptaw Graphics. Riptaw Graphics was there. It was a graphics bureau that was more so geared towards like the promo space, big in like the ASI market. 2018 opened up the San Pedro Sula office. That's when I came on board. When I started, we had 4 people in the Honduras location. And as of now, I think we just hit around 520. So it's from 2018 to now, it's just been a rapid growth. And with that expansion, like our QC, the teams that we've built down there, it's really something special. So we put a team lead. The team lead oversees 20 people. So there's always a pool of people to tap on. Okay, I've never seen this graphic before. What would you do in this scenario? The cool thing is too, with San Pedro Sula, it's such a heavy textile market down there. So after that, we started a location in India as well too that does more data entry, programming, and all that good stuff. So yeah, that office is in Pune. The office in India is about 110 people, somewhere in that neck of the woods. So depending on the time of the year, we usually run about 800 people.
It's amazing. We have really good training systems in place. Artists coming through GraphicsSource not only are apparel trained, but they're all Adobe certification, and we do testing and vetting and things like that. So we niche down to screen printers pretty heavy, but we do everything, but screen printers are our bread and butter for sure.
Lucas brings up a very good point. Both in our Thai facility and our Honduras facility, there is a rigorous training program. After they pass that certification, that's pretty much a guaranteed interview. And after the guaranteed interview, it's pretty much a guaranteed job. The goal here is to not only train up our own employees, but just really make sure everybody goes through the same type of training. Some little history lessons. So this was Dallas Cap and Emblem. This is precisely how we got started in the industry. So you can see back in the day, they would actually have like creative art departments that would build everything on drafting tables and hand illustrate, really, really rich history in the apparel market. That's really kind of our bread and butter. Just some more history. We actually, when it was Dallas Cap and Emblem, we made the patches that went on the Apollo missions. So this is really cool. This is hanging up in our Dallas headquarters. There's actually a letter from Richard Nixon, was the president at the time. So this wasn't the physical patch that went on the Apollo mission, but that was what they made for the astronauts that literally landed on the moon. So it's super rich history for sure. But we do have 5 offices. So our Dallas office, we have Calgary, Canada, we have Pune, India, Bangkok, Thailand, and San Pedro Sula. We're not 24 hours of uptime, we're at 22 hours of uptime. So, even if the Honduras location goes home, they could roll a lot of that work to the Indian team or roll that work to the Thailand team. So just it really gives us some good overlap and just make sure stuff continues to roll. We're all under the gun in terms of time base. It's like, when did you need the t-shirts? Well, I needed them yesterday. All right, well, why didn't you get the PO in yesterday? So we really try to offset some of that with some good overlap in terms of time and, not only that, but just like sharing graphical information. These are some of the different offices. This is our Bangkok office. This is our Pune office. And then this photo down in San Pedro, that was just when we were at the 6th floor. We have the 6th floor, 7th, and the entirety of the 7th floor. So what we specialize in, so these are kind of like our core competencies. So production art approvals, art managed staffing, administrative work. So that's another aspect of GraphicsSource that I don't necessarily know if we market as much. So, yeah, that's purchasing garments, that's emailing clients back, following up, chat rooms, all that good stuff. You can kind of help offload for sure. Virtual proofing, catalog and web art, digitizing, and data management. In terms of simulated process separators, we have about 30 on staff that understand dot gain and print orders and mesh counts. So actually at our Honduras facility, we put in two different things down there that really help. We actually have a little manual press down there where our trainees can actually pull a squeegee. This is why you trap. This is why you choke. This is why you want to go lightest to darkest and smallest to largest. So, we really try and not only convey that information, but then also train them. This is why we do it this way. So yeah, this is a pretty cool little Steph Curry Warriors set. Just kind of showcasing, when we get a file back, we're not only going to call out all the Pantones, but then also the print order. And we could even get as macro, especially with our staffed customers, where we'll have their mesh counts. And so when you get the file back, it's literally print by the numbers, base 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't call it the flashes, but if you essentially follow that print order to the T, but it's pretty rare that we have to go back and like reburn a screen or send different steps. So what separates us? One, North American sales and support. Our support is in Dallas and Calgary. So instead of having to speak directly with the Indian team or the Thai team or the Honduras team, we kind of filter it out through our domestic support and then, convey that what needs to happen, which helps for communication. It works that way. Offshore production facilities are owned by GraphicsSource. So it's not like we're subcontracting to any different facilities. These are GraphicsSource's, not only employees, but the buildings. It's important to us to make sure that our training is consistent from India to Thailand to, across all of our different places for sure. Fully equipped sampling department, offshore embroidery. I kind of touched on that with the digitizing that's being done in Thailand. Brand new office in Honduras, 300 seats. That's an outdated slide. We're at 520. Our process is your success. What we mean by that is we try to build out as many SOPs. I was referred to it. Every shop is kind of its own fingerprint. Everybody has their own special secret recipe and the way they get, from artwork to the way that they like things choked to the way that they burn screens. So we really try and, especially with our staff clients, we try and work in as many SOPs and kind of learn that process before we roll out. And whether that's implementing, logging into Printavo, ShopWorks, you name it, whatever ERP software, we really try and make sure it's very much like the virtual cubicle. So we want to run one-to-one as if we're sitting there right next to you guys. And then also we back that up with a Skype channel or Slack or Teams. So you can have a running dialogue. It's not just, I'm sending this out into the ether. The artist grabs it and then works on it. So there is a constant running dialogue, which my Skype blows up 24/7, 365. So, anything you want to add to that, Mr. Lucas?
No, we try to be as close to as an in-house artist as we can be. So really, we incorporate into your system, so it systemizes the art workflow. But then you always have to communicate. So we use a separate live communication like Skype or Slack or Teams, whatever. And that's really like a virtual cubicle. So you can speak with the artist throughout the day. And that's the beauty of having that location in Honduras. They're Central Standard Time. So they're working right along with us throughout the day, which is nice. And they don't change the clocks, we do. So they kind of swap between Mountain and Central. So they're back and forth. We just switch the clocks. So now they're Central Time until spring. But yeah, it's remarkable how well it works, just because that flow of communication, really, if you're communicating, things go really well. And we're very, very fortunate. I don't know, it's just the Honduras culture, they just are they want to do well. And so when you have people that are trying and we're communicating effectively, the accounts run so smoothly.
Yeah, there's really a good rapport that's built there, and that the artist learns your fingerprint. Maybe if something like initially you had to explain 2 to 3 times, as you work together with that artist, they operate more so as just an arm of the company. 22 hours of uptime. That's the advantage of having that global footprint, is we can really, if the Honduras team is too bogged down, or if the artist is running into a wall, we can pull some levers to really make sure that stuff is continuing to flow. I added this slide in here. So we just opened up a new division called Callforia. Callforia is sitting at about 60 people now. That's email support, that's web chat. To give you an example, there's a shop that we work with where that person will get, 40 to 50 abandoned carts per day. So we actually have a person that sits there and goes through the abandoned carts, emails the customers saying like, hey, maybe if we offered you a 10% discount, I see you had a 24 shirt order, here's a 10% discount, can we convert it? And it's actually pretty amazing the amount of sales that, just off of abandoned carts. But yeah, pretty much anything that could be done digitally, whether that's, web chat, email, phone calls, web phone, we can train it and then implement somebody that can handle that for you guys as well too. Even if it opens up that dialogue, like I think his conversion rate is something, it's high. It's like 85%. Tasks that call centers can perform. So outbound calling for collections, payment processing, whatever tasks you need to offload. Thousands of files processed daily. It's really astonishing. Sometimes I'll pull open an open orders report on an average day. There's 2,500 files that have moved back and forth, and that doesn't even count like the Honduras location. So if we were to compile it on a daily basis, it could be upwards of 5,000 to 8,000 files a day. So conceptual graphics, this is a division that took a long time to build out. So yeah, our team, we have illustrators that can take, something from a napkin sketch to, a rough sketch digitally, and then, go back through and color things. So like if you're billing your customers correctly and you're charging for your graphic art time, it really offsets GraphicsSource monthly cost. There's customers where they have paid, even in a couple conceptual pieces where they're charging, $750 for the conceptual art. It only takes a handful of those things to pay off GraphicsSource daily, and then you essentially have a free designer for the rest of the month. And the thing about it too is our Honduras team really understands Western culture. We struggled with conceptual graphics when it was in Thailand because they really didn't have a good grasp on what was cool in the US. Whereas the Honduras team, they're heavily influenced in Western culture. So they're able to pull from the same type of cultural references that we can. So
a lot of the shops that we work with, they do have in-house people, and then they leverage basically their time with us, if that makes sense. So you got your in-house designer making things, basically offloading the tedious tasks to us. And sometimes they need us for creative, and sometimes they need us for production. Sometimes your internal artist is just a super talented human, and every time they stop to do like a vector redraw, it's wasting their time. You know what I mean? So trying to keep everyone working in their strengths just makes you so much more efficient and also focused.
It's interesting. We have a shared customer, and the client contacted me and says, hey, I need to hire a new artist. He says, I lost my artist. He was with me for years and years and years, and he knew how everything worked within our organization, and he left. We're kind of desperate. I need to hire an artist. And I said, hey, listen, let me put you in touch with Nick. And Nick contacted the client, and I'm kind of following this whole string of communication. And now that client, I believe, has 2 full-time artists through GraphicsSource. Is that right?
Yeah, if you're talking about ScreenPro, absolutely, yeah.
Yep, ScreenPro. And he, was initially kind of skeptical of, this whole concept of having an outsourced graphic designer. And I'm assuming his people are in Honduras, yes. But he didn't replace that artist. He's just, he's scaling and increased his capacity and reduced his costs greatly, and getting the same quality work, if not better, for a fraction of the cost and doubling capacity. It seems to me that's running a good business. So, if I look at my own career, hiring artists for me was just really a challenging thing. And it's such a hit and miss, because you can find a person that has all the talent, that they don't necessarily have the production knowledge, but you can teach them that. But it's the chemistry within your organization. And so, I think we've all been there if you've had artists on staff over the years where you have this really super talented person, but maybe the tail's wagging the dog a little bit. And I think if in a scenario like that with GraphicsSource, I think it's unlikely to happen. But if it did happen, you would just move to another person, and you wouldn't have to train that person up from scratch because they could just literally step in.
That's exactly the way it works. And the good thing about it too is, like, to give you an example with ScreenPro, their artists, we have team leaders in there. So if there is an absence on our side, which does happen, people get sick, whatever, you have the team lead that can jump in. So, our goal is, if you're up, we're up. They may not operate at exactly the same cadence as the dedicated person, but at least they can keep things going until that person gets back. So double duty there, it really does work out. And it's scalable, like you were saying, Craig, where, if it's busy season, we can put more resources in there to help you get through that. And then, it's a lot easier than hiring somebody for a season and then, having to let them go, just kind of based on that. So yeah, we just try to be that forever option for sure. But then same thing, with our creative team, they recognize that if they're building a graphic, they know it's going to go into apparel production. So, they understand if they're building a graphic for screen printing versus embroidery, they know that has to be separated. So they're not going to build some, really crazy, elaborate Photoshop file that made it look good on a banner, but it doesn't play in the apparel side. So those two kind of talk to each other really, really well. Little case study. So this is actually from my buddy Pete over at Same Day Tees. He sent in something like this, and to have an artist redraw something like that, it'd just be a royal pain. There's no way I could do it. It's just such a hefty skill set, and even with some of the auto tracing, it just doesn't work out that way. So, this was pretty early on in our relationship. Yeah, basically they were like old school labeling, and he's like, "Hey, this is for a buddy of mine. See if your team can recreate this." And like our team got this done, and yeah, I want to say that was, the turnaround time on that thing was 24 hours or less.
That's quite impressive. And I'm also looking at the art. It looks like it's spot color separated too. Yeah. And you could actually print that without doing process.
Precisely right. Fully stocked digitizing department. So yeah, here's some examples of some of the different digitizing that we've done. Our team is really good with puff embroidery. All those specialty styles of embroidery that are kind of a pain and really hard to find somebody that's trained in that specific style. We do that stuff all day, every day over there. So if you really struggle and, if there's a file that you've had a tough time with, give us a shot. We'd love to kind of take on that first one. Oftentimes too, when people test us out for embroidery and screen print, it's usually the hardest file that the shop has seen. So, we really put our best foot forward. And we actually have a promo for you guys as well too. If there's any customers on here that haven't used us, we're doing a 50% off your first order by using the Printavo pod. So if you just mention Printavo pod, that's 50% off your first separation, digitizing order, redraw, proof, pretty much anything graphically related. If you have something it's a real pain point, we'll gladly jump on that one and give you half off.
Since we're on the digitizing and the embroidery and promo, I want, just so everyone is very clear, we have kind of two business models going at the same time. We have the a la carte services where you just go to the website and you order stuff and we make it for you and we're done. And you can do per piece and it's really nice. We even have integration into Printavo. Just call me or Nick and we'll help set that up too. But then staffing's off to the side too. Just so you know, you can just get something done and we'll do it for you, but the staffing option's available too. Also because this question comes up constantly, is the digitizing included with the staffing? And the answer to that is no. You do pay per piece on the digitizing, but you get special pricing when you staff. And your staffer can actually process everything. So it's not a workflow difference, but there's just no way for us to staff it because it goes through all those quality control checks and it goes to sew out and photography and all of these things. So it touches like 6 people before you ever get the file. And we haven't found a way to staff it. So just wanted to make sure that's clear and open and clarified.
I'm looking at that patch and I got dragged into a support call for Inksoft through our support Slack channel. And the customer had a file, a DST embroidery file. And when you upload a DST file to the Inksoft platform, it'll read out all the color changes in the design, and then you can map the color changes to thread colors, and that's what creates the rendering. And this file just wouldn't process; it just kept hourglassing. And I had our success team member say, "Hey, just email me the file," and opened it up in my digitizing software, and there was 85 color changes to this file. And it was a patch. It was a really complex patch with the crest, and had, it was a lot going on. And I knew immediately it was auto digitized. And so my initial thought was the customer must have auto digitized herself. And so I emailed her and I said, "Hey, I just want to let you know what's going on with this file." And I said, "Who did this?" Well, she had one of these, offshore companies. There's a zillion of them. And I told her, I says, "The first time this file was ever sewn was when you sewed it." And I says, "Have you sewed this yet?" And she goes, "No, I haven't sewn it yet." I said, "Buckle up, because this is going to take a while to run." And the point being, this is, you guys kind of low-keyed it on the fact that you sew these out on the specific fabric that it's being digitized for. That's a massive advantage, because with a lot of these offshore digitizing, cheap digitizing places, the first time that file is ever going to sew is when you sew it. And then you're going to be faced with two choices: accept the quality that you're getting and just accept it, this is what it's going to be, or bounce it back to them, and then having a production delay. And it can go back multiple times, especially if you're talking about caps, finished headwear, and puff. Always going to be challenging. And the fact that you will actually sew it out, make sure it sews properly, shoot a photo of it, so now you have product photography that you can integrate into your e-commerce platforms and virtual sampling. That's huge. So every time I send a client, including that client, over to you, you become their default digitizer. Your files just run well on a machine. So they look great, but they don't have any extra stitches. So, they're saving on stitch count and reducing runtime.
Money extra you spent on getting the file from us, you make up for in production. And that's sew out. They're just that whole, you don't know if digitizing is good until you sew it out. I mean, our best artists, we still have to sew it out to make sure it's perfect, and they'll still have revisions, because you just don't know until you get to the machine, And so us taking on all that proofing, it just ensures our quality all the time, which is why we do it, because the file from me is production ready, and it's leaner stitch counts, fewer trims, and actually proper underlay as well, because we don't use any automations for any of those things, because they just don't sew as clean when you do. So we just do them the right way.
Actually, Craig brought up another very good point regarding the product photography. We just added something on our website to where in your profile, you can actually upload your company's logo. So if you hit edit profile, you can paste in your company's logo there. So when the sew out does come back, it's actually branded with your logo, your address, your phone number. So it's essentially a direct screenshot of like, yeah, actually, I did do the sew out. Check it out, get approval. So
what I was going to ask you is, like, that hybrid situation, when does it make sense to, like, you have a staff artist, you're outsourcing? How does that hybrid thing work? And then how do you keep the peace between your staff artists and the outsource team? Can you guys address that real quick?
Yeah, that's a really solid question. Because oftentimes, when we come in, I think the artist sometimes views us as like, oh, they're going to take my job. And that's precisely the opposite. So with the way that we jump on that grenade, especially, and we've often referred to it as like the in-house artist is the quarterback, and our team is the one doing, all the menial tasks, the proofing, the redraws, all that stuff that would weigh down the quarterback. So we get the artist involved early on and really give them some ownership, not only with training the artist, but then also, when they're involved in that Skype channel, I'll use Shirt Kong as another example. Their 3 in-house artists are constantly in communication. So they've taken that, it's not just the ownership, but they recognize that now they get to go home on time, and now they don't have to take work, that when that 5 o'clock bell hits, that they have to go, work until 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, ensuring that proof got to the customer, for them to place the order. So, hey, we're just here to help. We're here to take on the menial tasks, and really giving them ownership of training that artist and building that rapport is something where it's very holistic, and it really does work out that way.
I'll add to that though. The internal artists, when we get that phone call and their internal artist is working, they're overwhelmed. They are stressed out and they are freaking out. And they get on a call with me or Nick, and we say, how much better would it be if you could offload some tasks? And they're like, I need it. And so normally we're a giant release valve for these people, and they're super grateful, to be honest. There's only a few times where they feel threatened, but we're absolutely not. We're here to be an extension of themselves and offload some of those tedious tasks. Because like we said before, nothing starts until there's art. Everything is running through them. All the sales reps are running to them. All the guys in production are running through them, and all of this stuff is happening at the same time, and their head is exploding. So we're just like their saving grace most of the time. Another thing we really do well is we bridge that gap between art and production very, very well. Because production guys out there on the floor screen printing blame the artist for anything that's wrong on press, and then vice versa. The artist is blaming the guys not running the machines. We're production artists, so we bridge that gap really, really well. So, I mean, we'll nerd out with you and get into your eye image and tweak the curve settings so the halftones look better. Like, we are really in deep with this stuff. And so just all those things, we just open up communication, release the pressure. So normally it's not a scary situation for the artist.
You know, it's interesting. I ran into a client at Print Hustlers that has, I want to say they have a dozen full-time artists with GraphicsSource, and they're a big Printavo client. And he was telling me that their GraphicsSource team processes everything through Printavo from the time that the quote is made and the quote is approved. They pick it up and they process all the statuses, all the workflow through Printavo and all the art-related stuff. And then it's just handed off at the point where they need to either run it to the embroidery machine or they need to print film. So basically all the production steps that go in between, you didn't even see any of that stuff because it's just being handled by your team, and they're walking it through the production steps. So he can go into his job report and he can see exactly where all the jobs are. Okay, this is at GraphicsSource. These are waiting for color separations, or color separations are done and we're ready for print film. I just think it's remarkable that you work so closely with Printavo. Some of our customers are starting to use GraphicsSource to build stores in Inksoft as well. How do you see customers using Printavo and GraphicsSource? Like, what are the typical use cases for that?
We have a set, and every shop kind of has their own different statuses, but we've got, typically it's like, okay, pre-sale, a customer brings in a 72 DPI JPEG. So GraphicsSource needs to be redrawn, GraphicsSource redraw complete. So then that, once that status change, it goes directly to the GraphicsSource artist. Hey, this needs to be redrawn, and that's pre-proof. After the redraw is complete, we mark it redraw complete. Then it's like, okay, customer loves it. Now it's time for the proof. That sales rep or the business owner changes it to proof needed GraphicsSource. Our team then goes and pulls whatever garment style, whether it's a G2000, places that vectorized logo on the G2000, places it internally on the branded proof to the shop, then attaches it to the Printavo order, changes it from proof ready to be sent, which usually automatically sends it directly to the customer. Once that customer approves that proof, it then notifies our specific designer, hey, this is, colors are right. Go ahead and start the production file. We'll grab it based on the proof that we created, then start doing the production files. Once the production files are ready to rock and roll, they'll change that status back to GraphicsSource production files complete, separation, digitizing, whatever it is, which in turn then notifies the shop owner, the sales rep, whoever is in that Printavo that, hey, the production files are ready to go to the press. So we try to keep that ball rolling until, we obviously can't print the t-shirts, we can't embroider the garments, but that continuous flow, it continues instead of it reaching a halt and then having to email the artist saying like, okay, all right, they approved it.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of Printavo. I mean, that the system makes it so seamless and easy. And the beauty thing about us is we're so familiar with the process. So a lot of people who sign up for Printavo, and I have a couple customers like this, they get overwhelmed for setting up the workflows and the statuses. But then they get an artist with us and we'll do it for you. And then their whole world opens up again because they just get stuck. I don't know. Printavo was super easy. And then there's just some really cool features. The fact that the customers are getting text messages and can approve stuff on their phone at the grocery store is pretty nice, and get the job paid for so they know it's good to go for production. So the power scheduler is such a big deal because my artists can peek at what's scheduled and make sure you always have steps a couple days before you need them. It's so nice. The workflow is so great, and it's been so good and makes my team, everything is easy. It's good for the clients. It's good for the shop. It's good for everybody. I mean, it's just a really powerful software that we've been loving using it.
And we talked a little bit about what we've been doing with Printavo, but also our GraphicsFlow users. Our GraphicsFlow users who have access to an art portal embedded into their website. The customer can pick out a vector graphic, and then they can easily customize the graphic right directly in the GraphicsFlow customizer. But the handoff goes to GraphicsSource. So then at the handoff in terms of managing the art approval, managing the proofing, if they need to integrate it with Inksoft stores or Printavo shop management, getting all the separations and film ready, sending it off to be digitized. That's been a great resource for our GraphicsFlow clients. And we're seeing more of that. I'm really, honestly, really pretty excited. I think the main thing is I wanted people to understand by joining this is, when you're managing art departments, it can be very frustrating. And you oftentimes get to be dependent on very specifically trained people. That person leaves the company, it leaves you kind of in the lurch. Hey, the get out of jail free card is GraphicsSource. And I've done that with so many of my clients. And I noticed once you kind of get a hold of a customer, you don't lose them. And it's just nice for people to know that there's this incredible company out there with highly trained people that understand our industry, that can handle the whole production and art workflow, have great business ethics, are just good all-around people. They're not technically still a small family business, but it always feels like you run like a family business. Thank you guys so much for coming on. And just to reiterate, if you are interested in signing up with GraphicsSource and getting, trying your first job, so to speak, if you refer to the Print Hustlers podcast or the Printavo pod, as Nick says, I believe you'll get 50% off your first job. And I would, especially if you're working in the embroidery world, let me tell you, once you've sewn out, take something really crazy that maybe your regular standard quote cheap digitizer you're not confident in, send that file to GraphicsSource, because you'll be surprised when you sew it. I've done that with quite a few customers, and like, wow, I didn't realize the difference on the machine having a properly digitized file. And believe me, I did, because when we were running 500 piece, left chest embroidery, jobs on piqué polo shirts. And if you're getting thread breaks all over the place, that's going to slow you down to a crawl.
Or just digitize a file you've already done and run them side by side and timestamp them. Like, you'll see it's such a night and day difference. I want to mention this so I don't forget, but if like staffing, it can feel overwhelmingly expensive, especially if you're one auto shop and you're using Printavo, you have 3 people, and it's just a scary thing. Printavo has the API connection. We can actually build out in Printavo where you can change the status, and it'll place a la carte orders for you. So you can just pay as you go with us. You don't get that personalization with the assigned artist, but you can still automate the majority of your workflow. It just goes to our pool of artists, you get stuff back. So it's not as personal of a connection. You don't have the Skype channel back and forth or anything, but you can do a la carte through Printavo using statuses, automating a lot of it, and just pay as you go per project.
This is kind of the maiden voyage. We haven't really marketed it, so this is kind of an exclusive for this webinar.
Well, yeah, I'm taking a note on that one, because I have so many clients that would benefit from that. And
yeah,
that's what, and it is kind of a gateway, obviously, to having a staffed artist. Right. As a customer, I can't say enough positive things about GraphicsSource, and not only the company, but the people. And I just want to, again, thank Nick and Lucas for coming on and spending some time with us. And we'll see you guys on the next one. All righty.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.